Hello everyone, welcome to Lever Guns 50. Today we're talking about how to survive a zombie apocalypse and would a lever action be a useful firearm in the case of extended survival in the wilderness. And so let's take a look at it. You know, it's pretty warm out here, but what I want to say is you're probably going to need a good wool coat, because you may be out there in the rain, and wool really does good in the rain. And you know, a lot of people are just going to give up and they're just going to die anyhow, because they would rather die than have all their tactical gear look so cool but nobody's watching them in their tactical gear and stuff. So a lot of those people are just going to, you know, they're going to do stupid stuff and go out there and get themselves killed because they really won't care, because surviving out in the wilderness with it raining and miserable, and they don't have their video games and their cell phone doesn't work, it's just not what they're cut out for. So, but the people that do survive, they're going to want something big that takes out the enemy with one shot. And this is a 45-90, and it produces up to a little over 5,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So it'll do the job, one shot, on any zombie that tries to attack, even if they're wearing body armor. And let me show you some of those big old cartridges. Look at these bad boys. Right there is an Extreme Defender. Now we're going to throw some footage in of shooting some body armor with this right here, 45-90, with that Extreme Defender. It goes right through it like cutting through butter. Had plenty of energy after it went through it to do plenty of damage to our water jugs and whatever we had behind it. So we know this will get the job done. Now, why would you carry this with its limited number of rounds versus something else? Well, the reason why I would carry it, because it gets the job done with one shot, and also because if I'm out there for an extended period of time, I can reload these cartridges with black powder. I can make my own powder. I can take a piece of lead and hammer it around, get it to the right diameter, and it will shoot down the barrel and get the job done. It's not complicated to make bullets for a lever action, because basically it just needs to fit in there. And if you use soft lead, when it fires with that black powder, it will fill out the rifling and it will sell down range. A classic example is somebody using a 38-40 in a 44-40, and long story, he was forced into slavery in a mine. They let him keep his gun because they took all of his bullets. But while he was digging around, over the passage of time, he found a 38-40. But his gun was a 44-40. But when he fired it, that black powder smushed that bullet out, and it got enough, it kept enough velocity, or got up enough velocity, that it killed his perpetrator and he was able to escape. So with black powder, it's not as crucial to have your bullets just exactly perfect. I mean, you can take a round ball and roll it to a conical position, just keep making sure it will just barely fit in your shell. It'll get the job done, I guarantee you. So for survival, when you're out in the woods and you don't have all the stores and stuff to go grab your stuff, like if you was out there for 100 years, not necessarily you, but your relatives or whatever, I think this gun would still be around and you'd still be shooting it. You would still be able to reload for it. You could use mercury primers and it would not destroy your action. If you use mercury primers on an aluminum action, it will, or it can, completely destroy that aluminum. So that's a couple of my thoughts on it. I mean, obviously your zombies are going to have all the semi-automatics that you want. So you don't have to bring one with you. You can just pick them up along the way, because they'll be everywhere. So, but my thought is this is probably going to outlast all those. You know, 100 years from now, this would probably still be working fine, where who knows what the others would be doing. The little 45 Colt is an awesome cartridge to put in a lever action, and this is a Rossi 92 in 45 Colt. This little thing, you can shoot multiple shots a second, and even this short tubular magazine holds 10 rounds. So you can get off, you know, 2 or 3 shots on target per second with no problem. So this is a fast little thing to shoot, and those cartridges can be loaded with black powder, the same as what I was saying with the other, and you'll still get the job done. Of course, I would also want to have a nice little handgun, and whether it will be a revolver or semi-automatic, this one right here is the 45 preparedness that holds 14 plus 1 round. So this would get the job done for a while until the action gummed up and the parts quit working and you couldn't make what you needed to repair it. But you know, it would work for a while. I would say like a revolver, like a Ruger Super Blackhawk would be the thing to have, because it's a lot simpler. It can shoot black powder a lot easier without any problems. It's not going to gum up the action, and it's a very strong gun. So when you're goobering around through whatever ammunition you find, you can generally use whatever powders you come across to reload those cartridges within reason. You know, it needs to be a pistol powder, but these semi-automatics are a lot more picky on that. I mean, black powder is not going to probably function, and certainly not going to have any power, because those cartridges hold very little powder anyhow. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. And of course, you'd want to bring a good bow with you. A bow and arrows, you can always make your arrows. Arrows are fairly easy to make. You got to make them quality, because an arrow is what flies to your target. But you can make them, here in Alabama, you can make them out of cane that grows along the creeks and stuff. They're fairly light, like a carbon arrow, and they fly really fast. And they're fairly straight, and they're not hard to straighten over a fire and get them just right with a little grease. So, and the nice thing about, like, if you have a good bow, and you can take that good bow and make you, like I said, you can make you some arrows. And this right here is one of those Daylight archery bows, and it's the Daylight Arsenal. So a nice good bow like this will be silent. You know, it'll be really quiet, and you can put silencers on there and quieten it down even more. But a good quiet bow, you can get in there and either take out zombies with it, or you can get you some rats or squirrels, or you know, whatever's available, because doubtful there's going to be any big game left in the case of a zombie apocalypse. And you don't have to have a glove. You can shoot it without a glove. You can make you a thumb ring. You can use 3 fingers. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But like I said, there's nothing like having a good bow, so you can get out there and, you know, when you see your lunch walking by, you can take it on out. Good thing about a bow is they're pretty quiet. You can make your arrows, and they're very deadly. So with a good bow, you can launch fiery arrows. You can make you a thing and hold your fire on there and launch fiery arrows over into the den of the zombies or whatever and light them up. So that's a good thing to have a bow for, is because you can launch, you know, arrows, and you can launch arrows over top. Like if you have a wall here, you launch arrows over the top and drop them in on the other side. So there's a lot of good advantages having a good bow, other than just the obvious hunting. So we talked about some of the things of a lever action. Like what I said, the zombies are going to have the semi-autos. All you got to do is take them from them, and you'll have them. So you don't have to worry about not being able to get a semi-automatic if you don't already have one. You'll be able to get one. You just got to be the better shot. It all comes down to making the first shot count. In the case of zombies, the first 4 or 5 shots need to count. they're not going to be real smart. And the best advantage you have is you need to know your surroundings. You need to be a good shot. You need to practice, because the biggest thing that the zombies are going to have against them is they're going to think because they got 30 rounds, they'll be able to take out all these targets. They'll be overconfident, thinking, I don't need to practice because I have multiple clips with 30 rounds, so I'll get the job done. Well, the problem is, if you miss with the first couple shots, that gives you if they miss with the first couple shots, that gives you the advantage to take them out. Always keep your distance. Always think about, okay, if I'm walking out through this open field, I'm obviously a target, so I need to stay hidden, you know. I need to take precautions, because anytime you have something shiny like this, shining, I mean, if I was going in a zombie apocalypse, I would definitely blacken this all down so it was hard to see. But if you're going into something like that, you got to make sure that you're not an easy target. You got to make yourself the hardest possible target, but you also got to use everything that you can as a weapon. And we'll throw in a clip right here of using tent spikes and nails and whatever. I think the key to survival is, obviously, you got to practice. When you're shooting your targets, don't try to get all your targets down with a magazine. Try to get each target down with one single shot. In other words, if you have 10 targets, try to make sure that when you fire 10 shots, all the targets go down. A lot of people that I know with semi-automatics, they'll just mow them down, but they might shoot one target 3 or 4 times before they actually hit it, but they got it into 30 rounds. You know, they took them out in 30 rounds, but there was only 5 or 10 targets. You know, maybe they still had 3 or 4 rounds left over. See, that's not going to work for you. You got to make sure that you take out 10 targets in 10 shots, or better yet, take out 2 targets with 1 shot. If you have multiple enemies down there and you let them line up just right, you can do like Quigley Down Under and take them out with just 1 shot. And why not? I mean, those rounds are going to be very precious to you after the first 6 or 8 months living out in the wilderness like a wild animal. They're not, they won't be growing on trees anymore. They won't be, you can't run down to your local supermarket and grab you a box of shells. So you got to think about that, and you can only bring so many shells with you if you have to go somewhere. So you really got to think about practicing to make each shot count, knowing how your gun functions, knowing how to load it, knowing how to use it, knowing how to reload for it. If you don't know all those things, those are all points against your chances of survival. So if you're going to go out in the woods and try to survive, you need to, well, what I'm saying, if a zombie apocalypse happens and you're going to try to survive, you need as many skills as possible. You need to be like Jackie Chan. Everything in the room is a weapon. You need to see every way of escaping. Instead of confronting your enemy, avoid them. You know, if you avoid them, and you know, you may live to another day. Sometimes I like to play video games. One time I was playing this game with my son, and I'm sure all the young guys will know what I'm talking about. And so I would go around, and I was just trying to help build his character up a little bit while, you know, he was doing his school or whatever. I would go around and I would just hide and survive till I was the second person. And I done it a bunch of times till it got his level way up, because he come in second a bunch of times. One time I actually won the game by doing that. Now, I would never pick up anything. I wouldn't pick up any weapons. I might pick up 1 weapon, because the whole point to the game is to survive to the end, you know, and the whole world closes in on you and there's just one, and that person be looking for you and looking for you and looking for you, and they couldn't find you, and then, you know, eventually it would go out. But one time I was there and I brought a shotgun that time, and there was a couple shots fired, and all of a sudden it said I won the game. And I hadn't actually fired a shot, and I was thinking, how could I have won the game? Well, what they did is they killed each other. So same principle goes in a zombie apocalypse. Let the other morons kill each other off until you're down to just 2 or 3. You know, don't rush out there and think you're the big hero, because that's odds against you. Let the other people do all the killing, and let them limit the zombies down to hardly nothing, and you just take out the last one. Don't run out there and, you know, try to. You should be like I was in that game. I wasn't observed. Nobody knew I was there. They was trying to figure out, where's this last person at that I haven't shot yet, you know? And see, that's how it should be. Most of the time, I just let the little zone close in. I didn't get in there in time and, you know, got taken out that way, so they never actually saw me. So, you know, the thing is, in a real survival game, obviously the world doesn't close in around of you, and you have to be inside the little zone like that. I mean, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and nobody ever knows you're there and you and your family survive, guess what? That's a big plus. Say you didn't have to kill anybody. You didn't have to take out any zombies. But who cares? You survived. Very important skills in the event of a zombie apocalypse is being able to track, because not necessarily to track others, but to see if anybody has entered into your safe zone. You should go around your perimeter, well hidden, but be able to go around your perimeter and see if anything has changed. Has any enemy entered into your safe zone where your camp is? And if you're a good tracker, you can also cover up your tracks. You can hide your tracks, you can prevent others, because as you learn how to track, you also learn what others will use to track you. So tracking skills are super important in the case of a zombie apocalypse, not only so you can scan your perimeter and make sure nobody has entered it, but also in the case one of your family members gets abducted, you can track down the perpetrators and take them out. So tracking, I would say tracking is #1 skill next to being able to shoot your weapon. Because without the capability of tracking, I'm talking about tracking across this grassy field, tracking across a paved road, a dirt road, anywhere. You should be able to track. You should really work on those skills. Those skills should be #1 on your list of survival skills. I would say second only to building fires. You know, beyond shooting should be #1, because if you can't shoot, well, even tracking might be beyond shooting skills, because if you can track your enemy, you can get close enough to take them out. But I would prefer to have #1, being able to hit my target every time, all the time. #2, tracking. #3, fire starting. And fire starting is mainly to purify your water and to cook your food. Using a fire to stay warm in a zombie apocalypse is going to be very dangerous, because smoke is easily tracked, and the smell of smoke, if anybody's good at smelling, they can find you by the smell of that smoke. So first of all, you need to be able to build hidden fires in the ground like the Indians did, that are not seeable from anywhere. In other words, don't have a lit up area caused by the fire, lighting up you or anybody else, because that will make you a target and you'll get yourself killed by having a fire. So fire is not for warmth. It shouldn't be for warmth, because you should build you a really good shelter that keeps you warm. It needs to be small, it needs to be tight, it needs to be crowded in the wintertime to keep you warm, you and your family. But a fire, unless you're in an extreme wilderness area, could get you killed. It could be more dangerous than putting a beacon up saying, I'm here, because that's basically what you're doing. Next skills you should have, and you should build up to a certain extent, is you should be able to determine what plants in your area are edible, or maybe even in a bigger area in case you have to move around. So you should be able to determine at least a number of plants that are edible and some that are good for medicine and stuff like that, just, you know, to make sure you have a chance of surviving out there in the wilderness 10 years from now. If you can't, you know, what if civilization is totally destroyed and you're having to survive for an extended period of time? And so you really need to have the skills of knowing what plants are edible, what plants are good for medical purposes or whatever. So that would be a really good skill to have, and that's something that I think anybody should know. Hey, this plant's edible, this plant's not. You know, this plant will kill you dead. Because, I mean, you could use that to poison the zombies if you needed to. So that's a skill I think is very crucial to surviving in a zombie apocalypse. And you should bring multiple knives, because the knives are very crucial in survival. And also not just knives, but knowing how to sharpen a knife. A dull knife is a piece of junk. I mean, basically, it's useless. If you don't know how to sharpen a knife with any rock you pick up off the ground and make it sharp enough for what you need it, then the knife becomes useless after a while. So it's very crucial to have knives, to bring the right kind of knife, and to be able to sharpen it. And also, flint knapping. Flint knapping is a very useful skill. I've skinned out a whole deer with the bottom of a Coke bottle just by chipping it sharp. And of course, it wouldn't take very long to get dull, and then you'd re-nap it, or flint nap it is what we would call it. But we just chipped it sharp, or I did. And I've field dressed several deer. I had a video on it, but I took it down because it's kind of gruesome. But if you check it out, and I'll try to leave a link to it over on Gun Streamer, I got a video on field dressing a deer with the bottom of a beer bottle. Because that kind of skills comes in handy, because you never know when you're going to need a knife, and maybe your knife was broken or it was lost, or you had to escape buck naked and now you got to skin something or kill something, and you need to be able to chip it, you know, chip something and make it sharp. And so I think flint knapping is a very good skill to have, because if you have that skill, you can use all kinds of glass, you can use bottles, you can use rocks, you can use almost anything to make a knife, or a cutting edge. It's not necessarily a knife, but it is a cutting edge. So I think flint knapping is extremely important in survival of an extended period of a zombie apocalypse that lasts, you know, more than a few months. Like in the book of Eli, I don't know if you've watched it or not, but in the book of Eli, it's very important to know the Word of God. If you don't know it by heart, bring your Bible. That way you'll have some entertainment by reading it. So always make sure you have you you can bring one of those small little Bibles with you. And in that way, if somebody, is dying and they want you to tell them how to get saved, you can do it. So it's very important to have a Bible, especially if you don't have it in your heart where you know scripture and verse, and you never can tell what's going to happen. That might be the most important thing, like it was in the book of Eli. So I think it's very important to bring a Bible and to know it by heart in the case of a zombie apocalypse, especially if it lasts, beyond 6 months or so. Another very important skill is people reading skills, because people will want to join your family if they find you and they see that you're surviving so well. And the thing is those people might be the very people that kill you in your sleep and eat you. You don't know. You've got to have people reading skills. You got to be able to read that person. And the best way I know to do it is by your sixth sense, or your feeling in there. And I think God gives you a certain amount of wisdom to know whether, in your heart, not necessarily in your mind. Your mind might say the person's awesome, but in your heart, a lot of times you'll know that person is not there for good. Like, I don't know if you've experienced, but I've experienced in personal experiences all the time that I'm like, there's something screwy about that person, even though they seem super awesome to your mind. Your mind says they've done everything perfect, and then later on you find out, yeah, that person was screwing you over about something. So a lot of times you have to go on that gut feeling, so to speak, and you got to say, okay, you know, you got to figure out a way to unjoin them from your group. You know, in other words, maybe you just sneak off in the night and leave them there, and make sure you cover your tracks really well. And that's where that tracking comes in handy again that I was talking about. I'm not advocating doing bodily harm to anybody. I'm telling you how to survive. Now, obviously, you have a right to defend yourself, but in a survival situation, not having confrontation is better than having confrontation, because anytime you come in confrontation with other groups or whatever, there's a good chance of your party being dwindled down, people being wounded or killed. So it's better to be able to, when you're walking through the woods, you see, oh, this limb's been broken, somebody is up ahead, so you avoid that, you know. So that's why tracking skills is, it may be number one more than number two, but it's right up there. You really need to have good tracking skills, not just tracking on the surface, but what are the animals doing? Why is that squirrel barking down there? Why are those birds flying up over there? Why is the blue jays hollering? That kind of skills as well. You need to be able to say, okay, somebody is obviously coming along here, something besides just a natural wild animal, because those birds over there started making a weird noise. The crows over there started hollering. Now I hear the squirrels over here barking. So those are very important skills, to know what nature sounds like naturally versus when something's disturbing them. So that's part of your tracking skills. That's part of knowing your surroundings. City environments is the same way. You should be able to tell by the noises the animals and the crickets and the stuff makes around of you if something's approaching you. And I suggest, if you're bedding down for the night somewhere and there may be something tracking you, try to find the leafiest, noisiest place you can possibly bed down. And the reason is because nothing can sneak up on you without making noise. Now, obviously, if it rains, that will change, and the environment will change around of you, but that's a good way to use your environment to warn you when something is coming. Sleep close to where some frogs are hollering, or where there's wild birds in the area that can warn you if something's approaching, especially zombies with their weird, they're going to be making a lot of noise. They're going to totally freak out the wildlife. So obviously, I'm hoping there's never a zombie apocalypse, but be like a Boy Scout, be prepared, stay alert, stay focused, beware of your surroundings. God bless each and every one of you. I'll see you on the next one.